Part 34. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen-san Buletinji. Chapter 349. It was Sam Sinke who presided over the press conference, with Angzi and Brett Brown sitting on either side of him. w.swimeng.law. The noisy press conference site has long been quiet. Through the old reporter who didn't know where he came from, the media reporters guessed Sam Sinke's thoughts, so everyone began to meditate, thinking about what they should do later. What kind of questions to ask. N11 sat next to Sam Sinke, watching the different expressions of reporters in the audience, waiting for Sam Sinke's opening remarks. Thank you all journalists for coming. Today we are holding this press conference to announce our important signings. Sam Sinke said here. He paused and scanned the audience. For the first time as the general manager announcing such an important contract, Sam Sinke immediately felt proud and frustrated with what he said. We announced that we have completed a deal with the San Antonio Spurs to sign before the exchange, send Lavoy Allen, and get Angzi and a future second-round pick from the San Antonio Spurs. In addition, we will sign an agreement with Angzi for 5 years, worth $58.4 million in 5 years, and player options for the final year. At the scene, the reporters heard the specific contract terms and scribbled them in the notebook, but Annie's approach was different from others. She took out her mobile phone and edited a post. Angzi signed with the 76ers, signed first and then changed. The 76ers sent Lavoy Allen to get a second-round pick from Angzi and the Spurs. At the same time, Angzi signed a contract with the 76ers for 5 years, $58.4 million in 5 years, and the last year. Option for players. The news she sent before the press conference was so enriched. At the same time, the signing of the press conference also began. The duplicate contract was presented to the stage. Angzi Shusha signed his name, exchanged with Sam Sinke, signed again, and then, the audience 76 the human staff handed over a jersey and Angzi and Sam Sinke showed the jersey together. However, there is no number on the jersey, because Angzi has not had time to choose a number, so he can only show a blank jersey. I am very happy to join the 76ers. This is a great team. Wilt Chamberlain, Julius Owen, Moses Malone, and Allen Iverson have all played for this team, but I know the team last season. I didn't make the playoffs, so in the new season, I will try my best to help the team return to the playoffs. Angzi made a moderate speech, followed by the media questioning session. The reporters present first threw the question to Sam Sinke. Although they got the explanation from the old reporter, they still wanted to hear the thoughts of the basic Sam Sinke. Mr. Sam Sinke, why did your team sign Angzi with a big contract after sending away all-star point guard Juhalo? Is this a contradiction? For this question, Sam Sinke had already thought of answering this question. He said, send Juhalo away is the unanimous decision of the team's management because we can profit from this transaction. We got 2 coins. One of the draft picks is this year's number 6 pick, and the other is likely to become a lottery pick. The same goes for signing N, because N can help us. Then Mr. Sam Sinke, do you think Angzi can lead the 76ers back to the playoffs? It's up to Brett and N. I said it doesn't count. Sam Sinke avoided the question, so the reporters turned their heads and asked Brett Brown. Coach Brett Brown, this is your first time as a head coach, are you sure to bring the 76ers back into the playoffs? Brett Brown nodded, of course. Very short answer. Brett Brown also seems to have got the true biography of Vicky. After asking a few more questions, Brett Brown answered all the questions in short words, and the reporters became bored. Only then did they look at Angzi, the protagonist of the press conference. Mr. Angzi, Coach Brett Brown just said he is sure to bring the 76ers back into the playoffs. What do you think? The first question is directed to the playoffs. In fact, the 76ers do not have the requirement to make the playoffs next season. The 76ers' record next season is destined to depend on Angzi's personal performance, but no one knows Anxi. What kind of performance he can show, so Samsinki appears to be lacking in confidence, and the reporters are also full of disbelief. I didn't come here to go fishing during the playoffs. I will take the team to the playoffs. Anxi's words seem to be the 76ers star. The reporters were not surprised at all, but they still questioned Anxi's answer, but the 76ers failed to make the playoffs last season, and they sent away Zu Holiday before the off-season began, and almost let them go. All free agents, unless they continue to sign up and introduce Dwight Howard, the 76ers will never have a chance to make the playoffs. If there is a chance, you can decide without just a mouthful. But you only rely on a mouth to think that you can lead the 76ers to the playoffs. Anxi shook his head. No, I believe in my own strength. Then we'll wait and see, the reporter from Sports Illustrated pinched Anxi, and Anxi laughed, and he directly replied, no problem, then you can wait and see. After finishing the series of questions, a reporter from here again stood up to make things difficult for Anxi. And, who do you think will be the star of the 76ers next season? Hearing this question, Anxi laughed inwardly. It was a very inferior provocation, but Anxi knew that this reporter's provocation was destined to be invalid because next season's 76ers will have only one star, and there will only be one. I'm here to become the head of the 76ers, and to bring the 76ers to rise again. This answer is a bit big, but it's really surprising. An 11 answered this question without any shy. He came to the 76ers to become the star of the 76ers. He also announced that he would bring the 76ers, rise again. There was an uproar at the scene. They didn't expect Anxi to be so confident. Is the 76ers the new home? It's just a joke, there is a joke to see in the new season. Confident, Anxi is really confident, maybe the 76ers really got the treasure this time. The reporters at the scene immediately came up with two completely different ideas. The first idea came from those reporters who had been dissatisfied with Anxi and the 76ers. The second idea came from reporters who thought Anxi had a chance to succeed. The press conference ended soon, and the reporters sent out their polished reports. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 350. Heavy. Finals MVP signed 76 ERS. The 45 minutes of the finals will be transferred, the 76ers usher in the savior. Anxi transfers to the 76ers and will lead the team alone in the new season. Swimming.law. As soon as the news of Anxi's transfer came out, it immediately detonated the world basketball. In any case, Anxi was the best sixth man of last season, the most improved player, and the finals MVP. With so many honors, Anxi's the transfer is naturally very eye-catching. And more importantly, at this moment, other big-name players such as Dwight Howard and Josh Smith are still meeting one by one and still have not made a final decision, although it seems that the free market is bustling. But the explosive news has not yet appeared, so Anxi's signing is the first blockbuster of the NBA free market. Anxi transferred to the 76ers. The local media in Philadelphia directly called out the revival. Last season, Anxi's performance in the finals was all in the eyes of everyone, with 45 points in the game, 38 points in the third game, and a top-level back jumper. With top-notch back skills, perverted three-pointers and mid-range shooting, plus an age of only 25 years old, and a comparison with the Rockets' James Harden, Anxi's arrival has given the 76ers unlimited hope. After announcing the signing, Samsinki immediately asked Anxi to choose the jersey number. Anxi thought about it and decided to continue with the number 7. After the jersey number was selected, a batch of new jerseys was put on at the local fan store in Philadelphia. Anxi's number 7 jersey was immediately looted. The 76ers fans shouted, "Let's go -76, buying Anxi frantically jersey." Compared with the unconditional optimism of Anxi by the local media and local fans in Philadelphia, The North American media reporters are less optimistic about the future of Anzi and the 76ers. Their attitudes and ideas are divided into two sides, while thinking that Anzi's strength is not worth it. The 76ers have spent such a huge price. Perhaps the 5-year $5.84 million contract will not be too bad, but the Phillies' optimism is not a good thing. Anzi is not as good as they thought, but for the 76ers, they are not. It would be too miserable. On the other side, Anzi's 4 finals did play well, but it was just a burst of 4 games. In a series of games in history, players who didn't want to play after getting a big contract abound. They felt that, even if Anzi does not become unwilling to play, Anzi will play very badly in the new season. According to the words of Sports Illustrated expert reporter Lee Jenkins, the Spurs' system bonuses are infinite, and their blocking tactics have unlimited possibilities. Many players who can't play on other teams have found theirs in the Spurs. The new job includes Richard Jefferson. He is almost out of the game with the Warriors. The same is true for Steven Jackson. He is now unpopular in the free market. And Anzi has obviously benefited from the Spurs' offensive system. The GDP, Kawhi Leonard, and Danny Green have attracted too much defensive attention for Anzi. Look at Anzi in the final game of the finals. Take care, Anzi's performance is not as bright as the first 3 games, so in the new season, in the case of the 76ers, no one is sharing the defensive pressure for Anzi. Anzi's offensive performance will plummet. By that time, the 76ers will show up. They signed a $10 million contract, just a defender. To sum up, Anzi has benefited from the Spurs' offensive system. Without the Spurs' offensive system, Anzi is nothing. This kind of argument has a big market in North America, not only recognized by many reporters, but also recognized by many fans. They feel that the 76ers have been taken advantage of and will actually sign a player who only proves himself in the finals. After Anzi's transfer was confirmed, it was confirmed that the Lakers and Mavericks contacted Anzi. Some Mavericks and Lakers fans even expressed their relief. Fortunately, their team did not waste money on Anzi. Especially the Mavericks. Tim McMahon, an ESPN Dallas correspondent who had previously argued with Anzi, even mocked the 76ers' choice. He even quarreled with Philadelphia reporter Tom Bobb on social media. Tim McMahon laughed at the 76ers for being taken advantage of, and Tom Bobb believes that the 76ers made the right decision. Tim McMahon just couldn't eat grapes but was too sour. Then, Tim McMahon said that the Mavericks have a better choice. They will sign Dwight Howard, and the triumphant Tim McMahon will have a tragedy the next day. The Rockets announced the next day that Dwight Howard officially joined, signing a contract for 4 years, and $880,000 in 4 years. With a bang, the NBA free market was once again thrown into a blockbuster, but for the 76ers, the Rockets signing has nothing to do with them. At this time, Howard joined the Rockets, but instead diverted attention for the 76ers. Pay attention to Howard's signing with the Rockets. Lakers fans scolded Howard loyal, and Rockets fans began to welcome the new All-Star center to join. Fans of other teams began to feel sad, because their team was destined to miss Howard. Tim McMahon's face turned black, and Tom Bobb naturally laughed at Tim McMahon on social networking sites unceremoniously. "Look, your target has been robbed by others again." The Hyupa forum was very lively these 2 days. The Hyupa version of the favorite Shandong Economic College post announced his retirement, which made Hyupa lively for 2 days. Then, Annie returned the news from the United States that Anzi joined the 76ers. Compared with North Americans who are not optimistic or have reservations, domestic fans and media reporters are a little bit brainless to support. Is it a good thing for Anzi to join the 76ers? In their view, it is of course a good thing. They look forward to Anzi becoming an all-star, and staying with the Spurs. Anzi has always been a role player. Although the finals burst into a wave of excitement, they hope to continue to do so. As a result, Ang Zi moved to the 76ers, and they saw the hope of continuing to go on. Therefore, their support seems much more brainless. Ang Zi has transferred to the 76ers. What kind of data he can get in the new season, let's guess. Ang Zi transferred to the 76ers and got promoted and raised to be the boss. Then what record will the 76ers have under Ang Zi's leadership? Can they make the playoffs? 5 years, 5.84 million, isn't it a little bit less? Ang Zi's performance in the finals is more than so much money. I hope Ang Zi can perform at the all-star level in the new season, so that we have a reason to vote for Ang Zi over the wall. The aftermath of Ang Zi's transfer to the 76ers lasted only 2 or 3 days in North America. Although it was good, it was overwhelmed by the news that Howard signed with the Rockets. In China, the discussion of Ang Zi's transfer to the 76ers has never stopped, and similar posts have emerged one after another. Has almost become a Nikkei post. Even Dwight Howard escaped from Los Angeles and signed with the Rockets, but failed to overtake Ang Zi. After signing the contract with the 76ers, Ang Zi stayed in Philadelphia for a week. According to Josh Harris's suggestion, he found a house on Benjamin Franklin Street, but the house in Philadelphia was not easy to find. Ang Zi searched for a week. Did not find satisfactory. At this time, Brett Brown contacted Ang Zi, and he told Ang Zi that he could go to the real estate agency to find his house. So, Ang Zi accepted Brett Brown's suggestion and went to the real estate agency, and finally found a house that satisfies him, with 3 floors of 1,000 square meters, a courtyard in the front and a swimming pool in the back, but these are not the main points. The point is that it also has an indoor arena with only 1 basket. However, after flipping down, an 11 found that the owner of this house actually wrote Allen Iverson's name. Allen Iverson. Yes, Allen's house. He has lowered the price several times. The price is only half of the original price, the middle-aged white man from the real estate agency said with a smile. If you need, I can help you run Allen. Ang Zi smiled suddenly. Okay, please contact us as soon as possible. The matter of contacting Allen Iverson proceeded very quickly. Allen Iverson quickly replied. He was playing in Turkey at this time and could not return home for the time being, but after learning that it was Ang Zi who wanted to buy his house, Allen Iverson directly stated that Ang Zi can live in first, and the money can be waited for a few months before he comes back. An 11 declined, but in the end he couldn't refuse Allen Iverson's kindness. The most important thing was that Ang Zi was very satisfied with the house, and finally agreed to Allen Iverson's suggestion. Just like this, Ang Zi lived in this house contentedly. The house is located in the northwestern suburb of Philadelphia, close to Villanova University. The environment is very good. The style of the house is fairy tale, which also surprises Abby. After a while, on the phone, Ang Zi and Allen Iverson negotiated the price. In the end, the house cost only $3 million in Ang Zi. The house price was much lower than that in Los Angeles. In fact, Ang Zi knew that Allen Iverson was still at a loss. After the financial crisis, houses in Philadelphia were a bit unsellable. In addition to buying this house, Ang Zi also used this time to open his Ang Zi courtyard. Just in Philadelphia's Chinatown, Ang Zi rented a street-facing shop and opened a Chinese restaurant covering an area of 2000 square. The chefs of the 8 major cuisines in China, on the first day they opened, a large number of fans, as well as the local Chinese in Philadelphia, almost all came. The business was very hot a few days before the opening. In addition to this Chinese restaurant, Ang Zi also opened a coffee shop, which was prepared for Abby. Abby has resigned from Fox Sports. It is natural that he feels idle and nothing to do when he stays at home all day. Ang Zi and Abby have nothing to do for the time being. The plan was to get married and have children, so Ang Zi opened another cafe and handed it over to Abby's management. After finishing the work in Philadelphia, the time has come to the end of July. Ang Zi took Abby and boarded the plane to Europe. This summer, he is going to spend his vacation in Europe. 8. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 351. On September 7, the hot weather in Houston was a bit unbearable. Even practicing in an air-conditioned arena on this day was extremely uncomfortable. WW Suim La. Ang Zi is training at the moment, and LeBron James's heavy breathing is heard in his ears, and Hajime Olajuwon's shouts are not far away. His body is full of muddy sweat, and the steps under his feet are still unstoppable. With a snap, Ang Zi dribbled the ball, then turned around and hooked up to the basket. Bang, the basketball hit the rim twice before it barely got into the rim. And, you turned too quickly, LeBron hasn't been completely shaken by you yet, Hajime Olajuwon immediately commented on the ball, which is not harsh, but Ang Zi knows that this is Olajuwon. He always teaches you how to do it calmly. Ang Zi feels very comfortable with this training method. What's more comfortable is that he didn't expect to meet LeBron James in the Big Dream training camp, which allowed him to test his training gains in actual combat. LeBron James also came to Hajime Olajuwon to train his back technique and low post skills. In the finals, Ang Zi's unfavorable back singles gave LeBron James this idea. He felt that he should continue strengthen his back, so LeBron James once again found Olajuwon. He came once in the previous off-season, it was after the season that lost to the Mavericks. This time, LeBron James did not expect that he would meet Ang Zi in the Big Dream training camp, but the first day he came, Ang Zi's training in the Big Dream training camp has come to an end. So, naturally, LeBron James and Ang Zi treat each other as a sparring team, especially LeBron James. He doesn't think Ang Zi is qualified to let him do sparring, but Ang Zi is more than enough to be his sparring team. But when the duel between the two really started, LeBron James found out that he was wrong. Ang Zi's back body technique has long been able to explode him, and after 2 consecutive weeks of low position technique in the Big Dream training camp, Ang Zi's low position technique has also made an improvement long ago, and that improvement directly made Ang Zi's the low post grew to 70, coupled with the growth of the back body technique to 80, facing LeBron James, Ang Zi naturally used all his strength and abused James severely. Today is the 3rd day that Ang Zi and LeBron James will practice with each other. On September 8, Ang Zi will leave the Big Dream training camp, so this heads-up should be the last time the two will be heads-up. LeBron James clapped his hands fiercely, and then shouted, "Come on, it's me." LeBron James took an offensive stance and took the basketball from Ang Zi. After a sprint, LeBron James came to the low post, facing Ang Zi with his back, banged, and knocked Ang Zi back half a step. I have to say that LeBron James still has a physical advantage, and this has directly caused Ang Zi to be a little bit weak. Seeing Ang Zi stepping back, James felt that a chance was coming. He turned and pressed Ang Zi to send the basketball into the basket, but Ang Zi did not lose his position. He just stepped back half a step and stretched out his hand to directly block it. James' shooting angle, the basketball hit the backboard with a bang, and then bounced out. Didn't get in. Hajime Olajuwon said a few words from the sidelines. "LeBron, you are too anxious, Ang Zi has not been completely shaken yet, your second step should be a fake move to deceive Ang Zi's defensive focus, and then lay up from the other side, this is the most correct approach." LeBron James nodded and continued to engage in the confrontation with Ang Zi. The confrontation lasted for half an hour. Olajuwon called out, letting Ang Zi and James rest first, and then walked to the side of the two, using a tactical board to analyze the problems between them. There are definitely problems. On the one hand, although Ang Zi's back and low positions have improved, it is certainly not perfect. On the other hand, Olajuwon's observers are clear and can naturally see Ang Zi's problems. After pointing a few more words, Olajuwon mentioned Ang Zi's departure. "And, when will you leave tomorrow? Anxie going? LeBron James looked up at Anxie. LeBron James felt that he had gained a lot from training with Anxie in the past 2 days, because Anxie is not only a back and low player, he is also a defensive master. Anxie suddenly said to leave now. LeBron James was a little unwilling, and then LeBron James could only shook his head in his heart. Anxie wanted to leave, he could not control others at all. Faced with Olajuwon's question, Anxie nodded. He had already thought about it. Yes, I am going to leave tomorrow morning and fly directly to Philadelphia. You started the preseason training so early, Olajuwon suddenly became curious. No, the training camp started on September 15th, and it won't be a few days away. Olajuwon nodded, and then said with a smile, well then, I will treat you tonight and see you off. LeBron, come together. LeBron James nodded, okay. After a break for 10 minutes, the confrontation started again. There were constant shouts from the training hall. Finally, exhausted, Anxie and James lay on the floor for a rest, and then Olajuwon went to the underground garage ahead of time. Driving, waiting for Anxie and James at the entrance of the arena. In the dressing room, Anxie, who had recovered first, took a shower, and then watched LeBron James come in. LeBron James did not go directly to the bath. He stood at the door for a while, and then suddenly said, I have a question for you, why did you suddenly explode in the finals last season? Anxie was stunned, and then smiled bitterly in her heart. Why did it suddenly break out? Well, this question is really good. I think my condition is very good, so I broke out. But this is not in line with common sense. When you fight the Warriors, your performance can only be said to be average, but when you fight us, you are suddenly very excited. Anxie tilted his head and thought for a while. He found a reason for himself. Maybe you don't have a real perimeter defensive player. The Warriors do. Klay Thompson and Harrison Barnes are both perimeter defensive player. LeBron James only muttered the sentence, and then walked into the bathroom alone. In the evening, Olajuwon hosted a banquet for Anxie and James at a Western restaurant in downtown Houston. However, there was not much talk between the three. LeBron James was not very fond of talking when facing Anxie and Olajuwon. This Anxie doesn't know if it is James's own character, but seeing him talking in front of the live camera, Anxie thinks that maybe LeBron James just thinks he has nothing to talk with himself and Olajuwon, so there is nothing to say. But Anxie and Olajuwon talked a lot, including the future of the 76ers. In the words, Anxie is very confident about the 76ers making the playoffs. This made LeBron James interested and asked Anxie several questions. Why do you think the 76ers have a chance to make the playoffs? As far as I know, the 76ers have lost a lot of players this season. In terms of signings, apart from you, there is no big deal. Anxie looked at LeBron James, who was full of questioning. He only said one sentence, isn't it all right to have me? LeBron James was silent immediately. He was speechless. On the one hand, he felt that Anxie was too confident and seemed overconfident, but on the other hand, he could not find the question in Anxie's answer. Indeed, just from the confrontation over the past few days, Anxie is definitely not the role player mentioned by the media. In the new season, Anxie will definitely become an all-star. However, LeBron James still feels that the 76ers lineup is too bad, so bad that even if he goes to the 76ers, he will not have much confidence. As far as I know, the signings of the 76ers are not over yet. Do you have any other signings? With this question, an 11 shook his head, I don't know. He really didn't know that although Josh Harris gave him the right to sign up independently, this right has not been fulfilled, so this off-season, the signings of the 76ers have nothing to do with Anxie. You don't know? LeBron James was a little surprised. An 11 nodded, yes, I don't know. LeBron James has nothing to say. He thinks Angzi is just self-confident, and there is nothing else to ask, so he has nothing to ask. In his heart, he still doesn't think the 76ers can make the playoffs because of one, the All-Stars can't bring a team that looks horrible to the playoffs. Unless it's a superstar. But the current Angzi certainly does not have the strength of a superstar. After eating this somewhat boring meal, Angzi stayed in Houston for another night, and then boarded the plane to Philadelphia the next morning. In the new house in Philadelphia, everything seemed so quiet and lonely. Abby was not here. When Angzi was training in Houston, she stayed with her for a while, then went to Phoenix and stayed with her parents for a while. Haven't come back yet. But in the afternoon there was a living person in the villa. Ivo Clark came, and during the Angzi special training period, a lot of things happened around Angzi. For example, the Chinese men's basketball team was defeated in Manila and lost to South Korea in the first game. Stumbled to qualify from the group, and then the quarterfinals lost to the team as never before, bursting into a big upset, and finally could only rely on the final qualifying, ranking 5th, setting a new low for the Asian Championships. Such a record naturally caused an uproar in the country. Although they knew that Angzi was gone, no one would have thought that the men's basketball team without Angzi would be so miserable and bleak. Therefore, the domestic scolding war against the men's basketball team and the Basketball Association, it turned on all at once. In addition to the defeat of the men's basketball team, there are also a variety of fascinating signings for the 76ers. The Summer League signed a large number of fringe players in the league. After some rehearsals, they were awarded training camp contracts for the best of these fringe players. The new season has not yet begun, and the 76ers roster is full of strange names. And Ivo Clark came for these two things. Super role player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 352. And, the Chinese men's basketball team suffered a terrible defeat in the Philippines. Zhang asked me to ask you, do you have any thoughts about the men's basketball team? Ivo Clark was sitting on the sofa, talking with his mouth, while still looking around. It was the first time he came to Angzi's new house, so he was a little curious. Swimming.law. As for the men's basketball team, Angzi has also thought about this issue. Manila suffered a fiasco, lost to South Korea and lost to Taiwan North. In the final analysis, it is still a matter of selection and skills. At the Asian Championships, the men's basketball team actually didn't use Xiaoguo. From this point of view, Angzi knew that these lords of the Basketball Association didn't want it. This fiasco is also a lesson for them. Next, everything depends on the performance of the Basketball Association. There is no need for him to do anything. It doesn't matter to him about the men's basketball. Angzi shook his head, and then asked, you said the 76ers signed a lot of marginal players. Ivo Clark nodded, yes, you were originally included in the entire team roster. There were only 6 players, Evan Turner, Thaddeus Young, Spencer Hawes, and Michael Carter-Williams. And Norrens Knoll. After the Summer League, the 76ers did not make strong signings in the free market at all, and Sam Sinke's approach is incomprehensible. Angzi frowned, then stretched out his hand towards Ivo Clark. Is there a list of current 76ers? Show me. Ivo Clark quickly took out the laptop and found a page after turning it on, which showed the current list of 76ers. Point guards, Michael Carter-Williams, Tony Roten, Darius Morris, Casper Weir, Eric Maynor. Shooting guards, Angzi, Elliot Williams, James Anderson, Adonis Thomas, Lorenzo Brown, Darius Odom Johnson. Small forwards, Evan Turner, Hollis Thompson, James Nanally. Power forwards, Thaddeus Young, Jarvis Varnado, Arnett Moultrie, Brandon Davis. Centers, Spencer Hawes, Henry Sims, Byron Mullins, Dwayne Dedmond, Daniel Orton, Tim Albrecht. The big list is a long list of players that Angzi doesn't know. He counted, and the number of people on the big list has reached 24. It seems that Samsinki is going to choose directly from this big list. How many people are on the list now with official contracts? Angzi thought for a while and asked another question. Except for your previous 6, the newly signed players, only Tony Rutten and Annette Moultrie have contracts, but their contracts are not guaranteed. Angzi nodded, that is to say, the 76ers already have 8 places are basically determined, and the remaining 7 places will be selected among the remaining players with training camp contracts. Looking at this big list, Angzi feels that Samsinki is not so reliable anymore. It seems that the 76ers' plan for the season is not the playoffs. It is likely to be the bad news of the outside world, so Angzi is a little unhappy. When the 76ers did not continue to trade their main players, the inside combination of Thaddeus Young and Spencer Hawes, as well as Evan Turner at the small forward position, were still retained. In this way, at least next season, the 76ers will still have the strength to fight for the playoffs. As far as Angzi is concerned, he is still unable to intervene in the signings of the team at this stage, so he has no good way. What he can do now is to prove himself in the new season and get the right of independent signings. On September 15, the preseason training of the 76ers began. Angzi drove the Ferrari 488 just sent by Ferrari to the 76ers training hall in the suburbs of Philadelphia. This Ferrari 458 was a luxury car sent by Angzi as the endorsement of Ferrari. Pick one, just choose one. In his opinion, there is no need to pick a luxury car. It's the same when driving out anyway. Amid the rumbling of the motor, Angzi stopped in the underground garage of the training hall. At this time, when the players arrived at the arena to start training, Angzi rushed in with a pull-out Ferrari, which naturally attracted a lot of attention. This is, Michael Carter Williams was a little surprised. Because they played in the Summer League, Mkaway and the others have been training in the 76ers training hall. They have stayed here for almost a summer and have never seen a luxury car. Haunt. After all, the players trained here are marginal players in the league, or rookies like Mkaway, who can't afford such a luxury car, so everyone stopped to see which old player arrived. The only players who have not yet appeared in the Sixers roster in the Summer League are Angzi, Evan Turner, Thaddeus Young and Spencer Hawes. When Angzi stepped out of the car with sunglasses, Mkaway suddenly said, "It turned out to be Angzi." When rookies face old players, there is always an inexplicable fear, so after Mkaway determined that it was Angzi who drove Ferrari, he quickened his pace and walked towards the locker room. Regarding the new season's lineup, Brett Brown is also a little sad. He even had a big quarrel with Samsinki once, but it is useless. Samsinki is still reluctant to increase signings. Samsinki's reason? It's very simple. No one knows what kind of performance and statistics Angzi will play. Before that, the 76ers should continue along the established route before. This season, the goal of the 76ers is to be bad, unless Angzi can play all-star level data. In this regard, Brett Brown can only smile bitterly. Even Samsinki is not optimistic about the 76ers in the new season. What else can you say? Fortunately, Samsinki slightly respected Brett Brown. At Brett Brown's request, the 76ers used a future second-round pick to trade for Tony Rutten from the Grizzlies. Brett Brown was optimistic. The dual guard. The rest of the players with training camp contracts will also be selected by Brett Brown. Who will leave and who will leave, Brett Brown will have the final say. The first thing Angzi did when he arrived at the training hall was not to go to the locker room to change training uniforms, but to go to the office on the second floor and find Brett Brown. "Brett, what's the matter with the team's signings? Is it true that the team is going to be bad, like it was said outside?" Angzi and Brett Brown are more familiar, so he asked directly, which made Brett Brown couldn't help but smile wryly. After thinking about it, he finally decided to tell the truth. "Yes, And, in fact, before you came, Sam's plan was to play badly, get high draft picks by putting badly, and then pick future stars, and slowly rebuild the team through the draft. An 11 frowned, but now I am here. Yes, and I didn't expect you to choose to leave the Spurs. When I knew it, I immediately called Sam and rushed to Los Angeles. In Mike's hands, I snatched you over, but in his words, you have not proven yourself and the team's plan for the new season will not change. I said yes, if I want to introduce some players, will the team agree to it? Angie thought for a while and then asked hesitantly. Brett Brown was taken aback for a moment, and Angie went on to explain, without destroying the original plan of the team. That's okay, Brett Brown nodded. If it doesn't affect the team's original plan, he can still call the shots. Well, I hope the team can bring in Drummond Green from the Warriors, Jack Laughter from the Mavericks, and Will Barton from the Trail Blazers. The three of them were just role players on their teams last season. Jack Laughter and Will Barton have not even entered the rotation, and Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, C.J. McCollum of the Trail Blazers and Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Bucks are all rookies this year. Also, there should be some good players in the free market. Let Sam sign some veterans back. If I don't play well, it won't affect the performance. Brett Brown nodded. Do you have to trade all of these? Of course not, try to trade. Brett Brown nodded again. Okay, I'll talk to Sam. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 353. When Angie appeared in the locker room, it was already filled with 24 players. Angie had never seen a locker room with so many players. WW Suim La. However, the players who appear here are basically unknown to Angie. Perhaps the one who is a little familiar is James Anderson. Angie has been a teammate with the Spurs for a season, but that season, compared with Angie's sudden rise, he then became a starter. James Anderson's performance was much bleak. He sat on the bench for half a season that season and was finally sent away in a trade. When Angie entered the door, James Anderson nodded towards Angie and said hello. And, meet again, you are already a big star now. James Anderson's words were full of envy. Angie smiled. NBA is like this, at the beginning of the season, you are a substitute, he is an absolute substitute, it's here in the middle of the season, you were still on the bench, and he was already a starter, and then a year later, you were still on the bench, he was already a star player, and the NBA will always have this kind of magical counterattack. Hello, James. Angie shook hands with James Anderson, then found an empty cabinet in the middle of the dressing room and sat there. James Anderson was sitting on the right side of Angie, and the two continued to talk. James, I heard you signed a training camp contract. Yes, James Anderson nodded, not embarrassed at all. Are you confident to stay? Of course. Angie laughed, that's the best. After chatting with James Anderson, Angie found that the player sitting on his left was not there until Brett Brown came in. Brett Brown came in and shouted, letting all the players go to the court to concentrate. So with a shout, more than 24 players gathered on the court at once, and Angie looked at the crowded crowd and complained in his heart, it looks like a football team. Well, everyone, today is our first formal training session. Before the training, I don't want to talk too much nonsense. Most of you are training camp contracts, a small part are non-guaranteed contracts, only a few this is a full guarantee contract, so whether to stay or not will depend on your training and pre-season performance. Brett Brown's words made people feel the crisis, and when Brett Brown announced the training content, everyone listened very seriously. The morning is physical training. The new season is about to begin. Your physical fitness must be recovered as soon as possible. The afternoon training is a 5-minute confrontation and tactical training. I hope you can perform well. The morning training is very simple, physical training, Whether it is Angzi or the group of training camp players, this training is basically a cut scene. Angzi has just finished training at the Big Dream training camp, and the training intensity there is comparable to this physical training. It's much stronger, and the players in the training camp are all from the summer league. They haven't had much rest this summer. The only thing that is a bit difficult is Evan Turner, Thaddeus Young, and Spencer Hawes. So in the morning training, Angzi was basically done easily, and then sat aside and watched Evan Turner's jokes. Although he was not so familiar with this group of teammates, Angzi had already entered the status of the team boss. It's just that the three veterans of the 76ers are not convinced, and Angzi is not clear. During the morning training, Norrens Knoll, who was reimbursed for the season due to an injury, also appeared on the sidelines, but he just chatted with the team's physiotherapist about the injury, and then saw Angzi and took the initiative to chat. The general idea is that, according to the doctor's diagnosis, he is destined to be unable to make a comeback this season, and then hope that Angzi can play an outstanding performance and slap those reporters who are not optimistic about the 76ers in the face. After eating a nutritious meal at noon, the afternoon match started. The three veterans of the 76ers showed obvious dissatisfaction. In the grouping, except for the good guys Spencer Hawes and Angzi first team, Evan Turner and the match Dis Young chose not to team with Angzi. Then, the confrontation began, and the confrontation between Angzi and Evan Turner also began. When he jumped the ball, Hawes won Henry Sims, and Angzi's point guard Nkaway got the basketball and quickly took control of the front court. Angzi is a player who likes to observe. When Nkaway dribbles, he started to observe. He found that Nkaway's dribble is still very stable, and the rhythm is also very strong, which seems a bit sophisticated. Maybe the media call it the argument that Nkaway must be a parallel importer will fail. Nkaway took control of the ball to the front court, and Evan Turner posted it. It was a bit obvious that the tit for tat was a bit obvious. Angzi would naturally not be polite. He just opened his hand to ask for the ball. Nkaway didn't hesitate to play basketball, give it to Angzi. Angzi singles Evan Turner, who was once the second best genius facing outsider Angzi. The duel between the two attracted many people's attention. Bang, bang, bang. Only a dull dribble was heard on the court. Brett Brown off the court only saw Angzi speed up, thrown off Evan Turner, then stopped in the middle of the distance, and shot backwards. The whole action was completed in one go, and the basketball swooped through the net. Goal in. A whistle sounded from the sidelines, and there were several applause. Angzi smiled and glanced at Evan Turner. The swingman who entered the NBA a year earlier than him and was 20 days younger than him is still unconvinced. Think about it, too, Evan Turner is better at offense. It's really not a big deal to be hit by Angzi on the defensive end. It proves nothing. Turner's point guard is Tony Roten, a point guard who likes to do it alone, but he still failed to refuse Turner's request. After all, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Turner is facing Angzi, so he dare not risk it. The world's big ones do it alone. Evan Turner holds the ball to face Angzi's defense, but in Brett Brown's view, this ball is nothing good. An 11 who is serious can block all offensive players, let alone an Evan Turner. As an all-around small forward, Evan Turner can shoot, cut in, shoot, pass, rebound, get stuck, almost anything, but the other side of omnipotence is not at all, as the second place in the rankings. Evan Turner has never been able to fulfill his talent, in fact it was caused by Almighty. After he came to the NBA, he became completely incapable. Facing Angzi's defense, Evan Turner felt the pressure. His breakthrough was stopped by Angzi early, and then he took the ball with his back. When it was impossible to push back, Evan Turner chose to turn around. Continue to break through. But in the process of turning around, Angzi stretched out his hand and drew it gently, and Angzi grabbed the basketball in his hand. Steal. Evan Turner only felt that his hands were empty. On the other side, an 11 had already slapped the ball and rushed forward quickly. There was an uproar on the sidelines. Obviously they didn't expect Angzi's defense to be so strong. Evan Turner was so easily killed by Angzi. With a scream, Angzi made a dunk in the front court. As soon as the match began, he took his teammates and played the opponent in a 4:0, 5-minute game. The 4:0 start was already very miserable. But then, Angzi seemed to be coming, and the defensive end was still not relaxed. After Evan Turner broke through with the ball, he chose to split the ball. Tony Roten on the other side received the ball and rushed directly into the penalty area. But at this time the league is still Angzi. Suddenly let go of Evan Turner, rushed into the penalty area, and rewarded Tony Roten with a big hat from the side. Turner's offense was still fruitless. Back to the offensive end of Angzi team, Angzi made a three-pointer from the outside and the basketball hit the net. It's 7:0 already. The match has been played for more than 1 minute, and the Turner team still has no score. Tony Roten finally can't stand it anymore. He can't play with Evan Turner. The victory or defeat is already divided. The next thing is that they haven't yet. It's time for players who are determined to stay in the 76ers to prove themselves. On the sidelines, Sam Sinke didn't know when he stood beside Brett Brown. He watched Angzi constantly hit and shoot on the court, constantly defending the opponent's offense, and said softly, "It seems that N is in good condition." Brett Brown turned his head and said, "Yes, he is in good condition. He has been training all summer and seems to have improved a lot." On the field, Angzi took the ball with his back, and Thaddeus Young changed defense, and stubbornly withstood Angzi. Angzi swayed to the left, swayed Thaddeus Young for a half step, then turned around, and hit the penalty area from the other side, with a strong cut, with a bang. Everyone in the entire training hall saw Angzi's excellence. Look at his back, it seems to be more proficient than last season. Sam Sinke said nothing. Brett Brown still looked at the stadium. "Perhaps, Sam, you think too much. Angzi will definitely explode this season, it will definitely." Sam Sinke still didn't speak. After a while, he said, "I have already contacted the few candidates mentioned by Angzi, and I believe there will be results soon." It doesn't seem to have anything to do with Brett Brown's words, but Brett Brown knows that Sam Sinke agrees with Angzi, and he is ready to follow Angzi's words and go all out to sign in. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 354. On the first day of the training camp, Angzi taught Evan Turner a lesson to let him know who the true boss of this team is. WW Suim La. In the next few days, Angzi was free, and every day was easy training, and then after finishing the training, he received additional training from Mike Procpio and Tony Brown, who had returned from vacation at home. Angzi's training center has changed again after falling back jumpers, backs, and low post upgrades. Now, Angzi's main task is to continue to improve his breakthrough, and then add hook shot and throw training. Angzi feels that it's time to further improve the means of inside attack. He wants to become a real super scorer with both inside and outside. On September 25th, the 10th day after the start of the training camp, Brett Brown began a deeper tactical exercise. There was no defensive tactics for the time being, because the 76ers still lacked an inside gate, and the defense could only hit man-to-man mark. The offensive tactics are also very simple. Although they are not block cut tactics, they evolved from block cut tactics. They cut through Angzi, Evan Turner, and Gaway's breakthroughs to attract defense, and then divide the ball to create opportunities. Angzi thinks that the Sixers configuration is quite suitable for this set of tactics. There is a Spencer Hawes who can support from a high position and has an outside range. Another insider, Thaddeus Young, can also pull to mid-range shooting. As the media said, Wei does not have an outside range, but his rhythm control and his breakthrough are above the league level, which is enough. As for Evan Turner, his three-pointers and long-range shots can only be considered mediocre, so the outside three-pointers and long-range shots have become Brett Brown's biggest headaches. The outside line basically can only rely on Angzi's three-pointers and long shots. After 2 or 3 days of tactics, Angzi's signings have finally come to light. Before the training started on the morning of September 28, Sam Sinky brought 2 new aides to the training hall. He first called Angzi over. "And, this is your new teammate, you should all know him." Angzi smiled and stretched out his hand towards the 2 new teammates. He indeed knew each other. "Hello, Sean, hello, Francisco. One is Sean Livingston, the other is Francisco Garcia, and Sean Livingston. He played for the Cavaliers last season and got a freshman with the Cavaliers. He played 32 games with the Cavaliers and averaged 6.1 points and 3.4 per game. Each assisted 2.3 rebounds, and his field goal percentage reached 50.7%. Francis Garcia played for the Rockets last season. Originally, he still had a 1-year contract with the Rockets. However, in order to sign Howard, the Rockets decisively abandoned Garcia's last-year team option contract and let Francisco Garcia enter free market. These 2 are both veterans of the Rockets, and Sam Sinky signed them with his relationship. After introducing Angzi, Sam Sinky said to Brett Brown again, and then Brett Brown directly said to Angzi, "And, you are the captain of the 76ers this season, 2 new teammates, it's up to you. Introduce." Angzi struggled with his brain. He knew that introducing new teammates was definitely a thankless job. Think about it. Before Sean Livingston and Francisco Garcia came, there were 24 players on the 76ers roster. Yes, there are 2 more players who have signed a guarantee contract, which means that this group of players with training camp contracts have 2 fewer opportunities. Bringing 2 new teammates into the locker room, the lively locker room immediately calmed down. Sean Livingston and Francisco Garcia didn't know anyone, and these players with training camp contracts understood immediately. All. "Well, everyone, welcome to our new teammates, Sean Livingston and Francisco Garcia." "Welcome," James Anderson applauded first, followed by Mkaway. Angzi observed all this carefully. He knew that the first applause was either a good baby like Mkaway or a player like James Anderson who had become Angzi's follower. The new teammates joined. The 76ers players were in a bad mood. In the afternoon, Sam Sinky came to the locker room again and announced 3 layoffs. Power forward Jarvis Veneto, point guard Casperville and center Tim Albrecht left the team. 2 people were introduced and 3 people were laid off. From this moment on, the internal competition of the 76ers became fierce again. It was another 2 days of training, getting closer and closer to the preseason in October. Sam Sinky once again appeared on the sidelines, and then announced another contract. Cole Aldridge joined, the 76ers inside. 1 more quota has been reduced. This time, Sam Sinky also announced 2 layoffs, center Daniel Orton and small forward James Ninelli leaving the team. Finally, before the start of the preseason, Sam Sinky completed a transfer operation at the buzzer. The reason why he said it was a buzzer is because the 76ers are going to China. In the preseason this season, the 76ers have China. The schedule of the match. About the buzzer deal, Sam Sinky also informed an 11 in advance, and he specifically called an 11 to the office. "And, I have tried all the goals you mentioned. Giannis Antetokounmpo is very optimistic about the Bucks. They will not let them go. No matter what price we offer, the same goes for Rudy Gobert of the Jazz, Trail Blazers. Over there, CJ McCollum and Will Barton are both available for sale, but their asking prices are high, so they can only give up. There is also Drummond Green. He played in the Summer League. the reality is very good. It is said that Drummond Green's performance in the Warriors training camp for the new season is also very eye-catching, and he has already overwhelmed David Lee. It's David Lee that's easier to trade now. When the Warriors heard that we wanted Drummond Green, they replied, yes, the picks for the next 3 years will be exchanged. So. And 11 smiled, so what? The reason why he laughed was not watching Sam Sinky's jokes, but the series of things proved that Angzi's vision is very good, and he values several things. Among the players, Drummond Green broke out. Rudy Gobert and Giannis Antetokounmpo are both very optimistic players on their teams, but their picks in the draft are relatively low. So for the few transactions you mentioned, we only completed one. Jack Lauder. Sam Sinky nodded, yes, Jack Lauder, it took us 2 future second-round picks to replace him. I hope he is as good as you think. Angzi saw Sam Sinky's suspicion. He nodded with certainty, don't worry, Sam, Jack Lauder's ability will definitely surprise you, at least he will be a rookie season. Me. Jack Lauder traded to join, the 76ers signings came to an end temporarily, and the big list to go to China was confirmed. Point guards, Michael Carter-Williams, Tony Wroten, Sean Livingston, Eric Maynor. Shooting guards, Angzi, Elliot Williams, James Anderson, Lorenzo Brown. Small forwards, Evan Turner, Jack Lauder, Francisco Garcia, Hollis Thompson. Power forwards, Thaddeus Young, Arnett Moultrie, Brandon Davis. Centers, Spencer Hawes, Cole Aldridge, Henry Sims, Byron Mullins, Dwayne Dedmon, Norrens Knoll. Darius Morris, Adonis Thomas, and Darius Odom Johnson were cut off at this critical moment. In the end, the 76ers were left with a 20-man roster, and of course they had to go out for reimbursement for the season. Norrens Knoll. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 355. At Magic City International Airport, the plane landed amidst the roar, and Angzi, who had not returned home for a year, is back again. The first thing after returning to China, Angzi accepted a joint interview with CCTV5 and Tencent Sports. The interviewer was director Zhang, who was an old acquaintance, so the two of them found a place in the hotel lobby and sat down and got acquainted. Smiled at each other. Swimming.la. Xiaoan, how does it feel to join the 76ers? Director Zhang, is this the beginning of the interview? And 11 smiled. Forget it, let's start, Director Zhang nodded. Feel good. Do you have the confidence to play a new high in the new season? Director Zhang was like chatting, and then asked the second question. There must be confidence. I chose to transfer because I transferred with confidence. Come on, predict your average per game for the new season. This question needs to be thought about. And 11 thought about it with his chin in mind. Are you averaging 25 points per game? If you score, it should be around 25 points, rebounds should be 4 or 5, assists are 4 or 5, steals and blocks should be around 2. The steals and blocks are so high, Director Zhang opened his mouth wide. Yes, I think I can do it. Angzi still has a little confidence in his steals and blocks. There should be more than 2 steals and less than 2 blocks. After all, Angzi's block attributes have not been upgraded. Only relying on single defense attributes to improve, but averaging a few blocks per game, Angzi is still confident to do it. The domestic fans think that the 76ers lineup is too bad, and I am afraid that they will not be able to make the playoffs in the new season. What do you think? I think it's okay. There are Thaddeus Young and Spencer on the inside, plus Evan and me on the flanks, and point guard Michael Carter-Williams. This set of starters is actually very good. There are also Tony Wroten and Tony Wroten on the bench. With Sean Livingston, Francisco Garcia, and Jack Lauder who just came, I think this lineup can make a big impact in the playoffs. When director Zhang heard Nkaway's name, he suddenly thought of the American media's questioning of Nkaway. The US media thinks that Nkaway will be the first rookie in this class to lose. You and Nkaway, it's been almost a month since we got along. What do you think of Nkaway's strength? Does it really fall apart? After listening to this question, Angzi shook his head immediately. No, Michael's strength, I see him, he will not be lost, and with his strength, it is no problem to start directly in the NBA. Angzi and director Zhang talked about a lot of questions like chattering. While chatting, Angzi saw Alian, and he walked over from a distance. Alian is also here. Director Zhang patted his head. Oh, I almost forgot. We have arranged 2 interviews today. After you is Lian, I have been chatting with you for too long, and the time has been forgotten. Angzi smiled. Is that nothing wrong with me? Then I can go. Director Zhang nodded. Angzi greeted Alian again, and after a few words, he left the place for Alian. The start of the China game was the second day that Angzi and the others came to the Magic City. After a rest night, the game began. It is the Golden State Warriors, the new team of the Arab League that played with the 76ers, so Zhang guided them to arrange 2 interviews in succession, because not only Angzi returned to China, but the Arab League also chose a new team for the first time. Back home. The venue for the China Games is located in the Yuanshen Arena in Pudong. This is the home stadium of the Moto Sharks. The time was more than an hour before the start of the game at 7 o'clock. The Yuanshen Arena was surrounded inside and outside, full of fans. When the 76ers bus appeared, the scene was boiling, and there was a burst of cheers of Angzi. Angzi got off the bus and waved to the outside. There were several screams outside the arena. Angzi is still very familiar with Yuanshen Arena. He remembers that 2 years ago, he played a few CBA games here. Together with the teammates of the Magic City team, he defeated the strong foreign players one after another without being optimistic. Opponent, Angzi also conquered the Spurs scouts and entered the NBA directly. There was a lot of excitement outside Yuanshen Arena, and the same was true inside Yuanshen Arena. Just as Angzi and the others sat in the locker room, they heard the voices from the other side of the court. Well, guys, the game will start after a while, let's be quiet. Brett Brown, who personally directed the game for the first time, is still a bit uncomfortable, but Angzi can see from his actions and his demeanor that he has learned a lot from Vich. Although this game is only a pre-season game, or even an exhibition game, you should know the importance of this game. Before that, we have already cut some of the players from the training camp contract, and you stayed. There is a chance to stay till the end, so this game is your chance. Brett Brown pulled out a piece of paper from the side and continued, well, the starting list for this game is point guard Tony Rutan, shooting guard Angzi, small forward Evan Turner, power forward Thaddeus Young, center Spencer Hawes. The starting point guard turned out to be Tony Rutan. Angzi did not expect that. Nkaway, who was sitting next to him, did not expect it. After all, Nkaway suppressed Tony Rutan in training. But Angzi was only a little surprised, but Nkaway was shocked and beyond resurrection. He felt that the strength he showed in his training was enough to start, but the result was like this. Brett Brown will not explain anything to Nkaway. Angzi understands what Brett Brown thinks. On the one hand, Nkaway is only a rookie. Some coaches just like to let rookies feel the atmosphere of the NBA arena on the bench, and then gradually promoted to the starter. On the other hand, Nkaway's style is too similar to that of Evan Turner. There is no long shot, and it is omnipotent in possession, rebounding, passing, and breakthrough. Obviously, the two of them cannot start together, and their functions overlap, so if you choose one of the two, you can only choose to let Nka go on the bench and bring the bench lineup. Tony Rutan's style is more suitable for the starter. Although long shots are a bit urgent, Tony Rutan's mid-range jumpers are still quite good, especially the mid-range emergency stop jumpers. When the Yuanshan arena was still noisy, the on-site DJ yelled, and the two teams played separately, and neat cheers immediately rang out in the arena. Yuanshan Arena is equivalent to half of Angzi's home court. When Angzi played, cheers resounded like a tsunami, reaching the highest peak in the audience. When warming up, Angzi hugged and talked a few words with Dao and Lu Wei, who were there to watch the game. Then, the game began. The opponent is the Warriors. This season, the Warriors have not changed much. Mark Jackson stayed on with the result of leading the Western Conference Finals. The core lineup in the team has not changed. However, the Warriors have the idea of dumping David Lee, but there is a potential injury. David Lee is not so popular anymore, and still no one cares about it. Although they left Jared Jack and Carl Landry on the bench, they also traded for Andre Iguodala through a first sign. This game was the first preseason game of the two teams this season. The two teams didn't know much about each other. As soon as the starting lineup was released, the Warriors' first reaction was, "Where did Tony Roten come from?" The Warriors' starting lineup is point guard Stephen Curry, shooting guard Klay Thompson, small forward Drummond Green, power forward David Lee and center Andrew Bogut. Drummond Green actually overwhelmed Harrison Barnes to become the starter. It seems that Drummond Green's summer game and preseason training broke out. It should be true. The game started quickly. In the jump ball, Spencer Hawes overwhelmed Andrew Bogut, who was on the floor, and dialed the basketball over. Angzi got the ball directly from the perimeter, and there was cheers on the spot, all waiting for Angzi's first attack. Drummond Green directly came up. Although it was an exhibition preseason game, when Angzi was attacking, the Warriors still paid great attention to it. Drummond Green was specifically asked to replace Angzi with Drummond's. With her size and strength, Angzi's physical advantage disappeared. Bang bang bang. After dribbling the ball from the outside line, Angzi accelerated and squeezed Drummond Green into the three-point line. Green quickly caught up. Angzi turned around, turned his back to Green, sat twice, and turned around to make a shot. In the finals of last season, Angzi's backward jumper was already famous. Everyone knew that Angzi had a very high shooting rate. So when Angzi turned around to make a move, David Lee immediately came over. Pinch Angzi. After one dribble, an 11 switched to a pass, a lob. Inside, Thaddeus Young caught the ball and dunked. With a bang, there was a tide of cheers from the sidelines. For the first goal, an 11 did not choose to come by himself, but most of the credit for this offense belonged to an 11. He attracted the defense, and then divided the ball to the inside ear side de Yang to complete a dunk. When the two returned to the defense, it was still after a high five. Thaddeus Young has fully recognized Angzi's strength. The Warriors' offense, the sturdy Drummond Green's role was revealed. He gave Stephen Curry a solid pick and roll from outside the three-point line. After a dribble, Curry made a scream. Score 3 points. 3:2. In the next round of the 76ers offense, Angzi did not continue to hold the ball. After Tony Roten took control of the front court, he handed the ball to Evan Turner. Evan Turner held the ball quite old-fashioned from the outside. An 11 quickly came out from the inside. It was also a pick-and-roll screen. Thaddeus Young helped Angzi block Drummond Green. After Angzi threw Green away, Angzi took it. The ball directs a three-point jumper. With a scream, the cheers of Yuanshan Arena sounded like an explosion, and Angzi scored. He also scored a three-pointer from Stephen Curry. On the field, the two eyes met, and a century war began. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 356. Stephen Curry, his breakthrough, high throw. Go in. Beautiful. Stephen Curry raised a finger and pointed it high above the arena, and there was a burst of cheers from the sidelines. In this China game, although the fans on the sidelines were a bit biased towards Anxi, they weren't going to boo. On the side of the Warriors, after all, the Warriors also have a United Arab League. At the opening 5:5, the 76ers tied the Warriors. On the 76ers side, Tony Roten advanced to the front court with the ball, Anxi rounded to the top of the arc, and took over the basketball again without permission. Stephen Curry made another score. With the basket, Anxi's ambition to win came. He is not a newcomer. Naturally, it can be seen that Stephen Curry is against him, holding the ball and looking for opportunities on the perimeter. An 11 immediately accelerated, smashed Drummond Green with absolute speed, and rushed into the three-point line. An emergency stop jumper dodges David Lee's defense with a scream. Again. Good shot. Anxi scored 5 points in a row. The cheers of UN Shen Arena overwhelmed the on-site commentator, and Anxi's home court advantage emerged. Anxi's scoring ability is really strong, speeding up past Drummond Green, and then anxiously stopping the jumper. Shooting is very stable. In the new season we can expect Anxi to reach the All-Star with his own strength. Yes, just looking at the first two goals, you can definitely look forward to Anxi in the new season. An offensive prowess has been demonstrated by an offensive three-pointer plus an emergency stop jumper. Next, Stephen Curry continued to hold the ball. Although he didn't match Anxi, he still faced Anxi unconvinced. Accelerating to break through Tony Roten's defense, Stephen Curry rushed to the mid-range position, against Tony Roten's interference, a jumper, hit again. The points difference continued to tie. Anxi also continued to hold the ball, playing Drummond Green from the middle distance. Sit and fight twice, and there were shouts of cheering on the scene. After sitting and playing, Anxi stopped at the free throw line. UN Shen Arena gradually became quiet. Anxi swayed to the left, and then suddenly turned around on the right side. A turnover jumper, the basketball crossed an arc and hit with a scream. Boom, UN Shen Arena rang out with cheers and screams. Anxi's backward jumper. A somewhat legendary offensive technique. The reaction of the fans on the scene is a bit big, but director Zhang believes that this reaction is normal. Anxi's fallback jumper actually screamed at the scene, but Anxi's fallback jumper deserves such cheers and screams. It is precisely because of the fallback jumper that Anxi can beat the Heat and win the championship last season. Stephen Curry gritted his braces and glanced at Anxi, who waved his hand to celebrate the goal. Drummond, give me the ball. Drummond Green took control of the ball to the front court, and then Stephen Curry directly asked for the ball. Green couldn't understand what Stephen Curry did. Didn't he say that he had made a pick-and-roll screen with the ball on the outside, and then he handed in hand to cooperate? Why did Curry suddenly become singles with the ball? Drummond couldn't figure it out, but Anxi understood Stephen Curry's thoughts. He pushed directly in front of Stephen Curry and changed defense with Tony Roten. If Tony Roten continues to defend Curry, this matchup will never end. Klay Thompson had a chance when Tony Roten changed defense. Klay Thompson accelerated, bypassing Drummond Green's screen at the free throw line, and threw Tony Roten away, but Stephen Curry did not pass the ball. Meaning, he dribbled the ball twice in succession from the outside, and then accelerated and wiped it from Anxi. Stephen Curry's speed still has a certain advantage, and his change of direction is also very dexterous, but Anxi still rushed directly, and kept pressing Stephen Curry, rushed into the penalty area. In the penalty area, Stephen Curry repeated the old skills. There was a high toss, but Anxi, who had been pressing behind Curry, did not give him this opportunity and jumped directly, forcing Stephen Curry to change to a low toss. The basketball quickly flew to the upper edge of the hoop, then slammed onto the hoop and bounced out. An 11 stretched out his hand and took advantage of his height to take down the rebound. Anxi defended Stephen Curry alone. The 76ers also got a 2-point lead. An 11, who grabbed the rebound, ran directly to the front court with the ball, and then passed the ball to Evan Turner. Turner hasn't got the ball for several consecutive waves of offense. When Angzi singles, he found his position in the team very uncomfortable. He is a player who needs the ball in hand, but obviously, once Angzi starts singles mode, he must hand over the ball. Uncomfortable and uncomfortable, Evan Turner, who got the ball, still showed his strength. He made a breakthrough in the front and found an open space directly after attracting the defense. He hit the ground and passed the ball into the penalty area. Spencer Hawes dunked for 2 minutes. The 76ers led by 4 points, and Angzi did not participate in this round of offense, which also means that his confrontation with Stephen Curry is over. Therefore, the Warriors then practiced their tactics honestly. The preseason games are not that important. Team-to-team games are for the purpose of training. The purpose of the Warriors is to practice tactics, and the 76ers, the goal is to see how good the players with training camp contracts are, and who should be left in the end. Therefore, Angzi played for more than 5 minutes in the first quarter, and then was replaced by Brett Brown during the timeout. In more than 5 minutes, Angzi scored 11 points, which proved his own strength, whether it was three-pointer or mid-range shot, whether it's an emergency stop jumper or a backward jumper, Angzi showed it all. An 11 left the field, but the Warriors replaced Ali N. Not long after the UAE was replaced, the fans on the sidelines turned their backs. They began to prefer the Warriors, but after a few minutes of continuous play, the 76ers were completely downwind, and Brett Brown was still sitting firmly on Tarzan. There is no thought to adjust. The fans on the sidelines were anxious, and a rough-looking man stood up and yelled, "Change Suway." After shouting out, I immediately felt something was wrong. A group of fans around him burst into laughter, and then another girl fan helped him shout out the correct slogan, "Change to Angzi." Then, the entire UN Shen arena rang out for Angzi. Change Angzi. Change Angzi. Change Angzi. Change Angzi. And 11 lowered his head. He wanted to laugh a little. It was a fart to shout like this. Brett Brown couldn't understand Chinese. Although he knew the pronunciation of Angzi, he would not pay attention to it with a change. Brett Brown didn't think of the shouts from the sidelines of Angzi at all. He thought these fans were cheering for his team or the opposing team. This was the first quarter of the game. The atmosphere is over. At the end of the first quarter, although Angzi scored 11 points in 5 minutes, the 76ers inevitably fell behind. At 40:28, the Warriors scored 40 points in the first quarter. The strong offensive power of the playoffs team played its power in front of the 76ers' weak defense. At the beginning of the second quarter, the 76ers replaced another batch of substitutes and continued to fight with the Warriors' semi-main lineup. In this quarter, the Warriors deliberately slowed down the pace of offense. After all, it was just a preseason game. If people lose too badly, it would be too shameful. The UAE also got a lot of opportunities in this quarter. He kept making jump shots near the three-point line, but his shooting rate was very average. He only made 2 goals in 7 shots. However, Angzi was not worried about UAE. Angzi found out. Ali N's style is actually very suitable for the Warriors, continuous strikes. In fact, because he has not yet adapted to the Warriors' tactics, several shots seem a bit hasty. Brett Brown didn't mean to switch to Angzi, and the shouting on the sidelines gradually stopped. However, the game after Angzi left the field was really ugly. It has always been a tactical drill between the two teams. Fortunately, Mark Jackson gave more face. Let Arab League play the entire second quarter. By the second half, the Warriors were already 20 points ahead of the 76ers. The difference was a bit big, but Brett Brown didn't care at all, because as long as the eyes were not blind, it could be seen that the 76ers had not tried their best. Their main force was only playing. About 5 minutes later, the group of training camp players came out, and the Warriors have always played semi-mainly, and the Warriors played normal NBA tactics, so it's not surprising that the score was opened. But at the beginning of the second half, Brett Brown decided to put on the main force again. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 357. Well, Evan, come here. WW Suim La Brett Brown beckoned, and several of the team's main players surrounded them. At the beginning of the third quarter, we practiced tactics for a while. Evan, Thaddeus, Spencer, and Tony, you five played on the field, defensively, beat to man, and offensively use the tactics we practiced before. Understand? An 11 nodded, understood. However, when he looked at Nkaway, an 11 smiled bitterly in his heart. During the third quarter drill tactics, there was still no Nkaway in the main lineup. Nkaway's thoughts at this time were obvious. This little guy may have begun to doubt himself. Angzi scratched his head. He felt that no matter what Brett Brown thought, he should comfort the young man. But not now. Angzi turned his head and went on the field. After the game, he was ready to talk to Nkaway directly. As for Brett Brown, Angzi knew that Brett Brown must have his own ideas, and he couldn't let Nkaway replace him for no reason. At the beginning of the third quarter, Angzi played again, and there was a burst of cheers from the sidelines. Angzi is playing again. At the beginning of the third quarter, Coach Brett Brown was going to let him play for a while. Now the difference between the two teams is 20 points. The 76ers should want to chase points, but the Warriors have also replaced the main force. The 76ers' idea of chasing points is estimated to be difficult to realize. The 76ers do have the idea of chasing points. Although it is a preseason, it doesn't matter if you lose, but too many losses are ugly. For example, the Lakers in the fourth season had an 8-game losing streak in the preseason, which directly caused them to prepare before the start of the season. Questioned, after the start of the season, they did play very badly, and McBrow dismissed get out of class because of this. This game only depends on the situation in the first half. The hope of winning is very small, but the 76ers do not want to see a disastrous defeat. Angzi took the main lineup onto the court. The first ball in the third quarter belonged to the 76ers, so Spencer Hawes and Tony Roten went to the backcourt to serve. Angzi found a position outside the three-point line. Stand up. In the backcourt, before the ball came out, Stephen Curry stood comfortably with his arms akimbo next to an 11 and turned his head and glanced at an 11. Angzi, why did you choose to go to Philadelphia? What? Angzi was stunned, he hadn't reacted yet. Why did you choose Philadelphia, a bad team? Stephen Curry repeated, but with a little added. Big bad team. Stephen Curry nodded, yes, it's the big bad team. Isn't it the big bad team that we beat 20 points in halftime? Angzi smiled but smiled, perhaps. Whether the 76ers are a bad team, Angzi thinks it is not, but it can't hold back. Everyone in the outside world thinks it is, so Angzi feels that he should take some practical action to let Stephen Curry know that the 76ers are not a bad team. The game started, Tony Roten took the ball to the front court, Angzi also went to the bottom corner, Evan Turner received the ball at the top of the arc, and then began to break through. When Evan Turner broke through to the inside, Angzi led Klay Thompson, who was defending him, circled the sideline, and then flew to the top of the arc in the middle. Thaddeus Young gave Angzi a pick and roll screen. Angzi shook off Harrison Barnes and caught the ball directly at the top of the arc. At this time, there was no one at the top of the arc, and some people were also attracted by Evan Turner's breakthrough, so Evan Turner passed the ball behind his head. Angzi caught the ball and aimed at the basket, and shot a three-pointer. Swish. Go in. Angzi's three-pointer won a burst of cheers from the fans on the sidelines, and Brett Brown also stood on the sidelines and clapped his hands, giving the players a thumbs up. This tactic is the only three-point tactic currently used by the 76ers. There is no way. Only Anzi can shoot three-pointers in the starting lineup, so Brett Brown didn't deploy too many three-point tactics. One or two is enough. The reason why Anzi used this tactic at the beginning of the game was to chase points. If you want to chase points faster, then naturally you have to shoot 3 points. After all, 3 points are 1 point more than 2 points. 3 points are in the pocket, and the point difference becomes 17 points, but this point difference is not too stable, so when turning around to turn back to defense, an 11 shouted defense. Defense. Watch you guys, then he whispered to Tony Roten. Tony, we both switch defenses. Tony Roten nodded and agreed. Although the Warriors have a lot of scoring points in the main lineup, Tony Roten also understands that the Warriors' points are concentrated on Stephen Curry, so as long as Stephen Curry is guarded, the 76ers will have more points. Opportunity to guard the Warriors. Stephen Curry took the ball to the front court leisurely, and an 11 immediately pushed it up. Stephen Curry, who was still active, immediately got serious, but he knew that Anzi was good at stealing. Cautiously dribbling the ball, Stephen Curry also found that he wanted to rely on his personal ability to break through Anzi's defense, which was very difficult, so he waved, and Andrew Bogut, who was inside, took the basketball and held the ball as a bridgehead. Stand up high. Afterwards, Stephen Curry, who had no ball, started a small motor and ran towards the inside with a swift smoke, and 11 also accelerated to follow. Stephen Curry made a lap from the penalty area, then threw Anzi away through the screen, caught the ball from the middle distance and shot it with a scream. Stephen Curry's mid-range shot. It's in. With the yelling of the on-site commentator, Stephen Curry raised his right hand and made a shot to celebrate the goal. Anzi looked up at the scoreboard, 19 points difference, still narrowed the point difference by 1 point. After serving in the backcourt, Anzi made a gesture. This time, he was going to practice another set of tactics. This time it was Anzi holding the ball. The tactics were very simple. Anzi broke through and then relied on his personal ability to attract defense, or divide the ball, or continue to do it by himself. It was Klay Thompson who defended Anzi. Drummond Green hadn't played in the second half. The defensive pressure on Anzi was much less. He directly relied on his body to suppress it. When he was about to rush to the basket, Andrew Bogut directly let go of Spencer Hawes and made up for it. An 11 hit the ball directly and Spencer Hawes scored 2 points in a mid-range jumper. With 17 points difference, the 76ers who returned to the defense continued to defend tenaciously under Anzi's encouragement. Stephen Curry faced Anzi's defense at the top of the arc. Klay Thompson bypassed the screen and then received a pass from Curry, but Klay Thompson missed a jumper. Inside, Thaddeus Yanka grabbed the rebound from a good position, and the 76ers ushered in the opportunity to counterattack. Anzi opened his hand outside for the ball, holding the ball and attacking fast. Bang bang bang. Anzi dribbled the ball and rushed to the front court, taking advantage of the Warriors' position, rushed into the inside, slammed, and dunked. With a boom, cheers exploded like thunder. Quick break. Dunk. Dunk in Anzi's quick break. Beautiful. Worthy of being the strongest yellow dunk. Everyone's focus was on Anzi's dunk. The playback showed that when Anzi stepped into the free throw line, he had already taken off, then raised his long arms, waved in the air, and slammed. The basketball hit the hoop. However, Anzi's focus is on the points difference. In a blink of an eye, there are only 15 points left. The Warriors' offense came again, but Stephen Curry's mid-range shot was hit again. Fortunately, the Warriors also defended the 76ers' offense. Anzi's mid-range shot also hit the shots, with a score difference of 15 points. After 2 consecutive misses, Stephen Curry did his best in this offense. A dexterous breakthrough shook Angzi away and scored 2 points. After hitting 2 points, the points difference came to 17 points again. An 11 side, and at the same time he was cruel, and made a gesture, which was the same 3-point tactic as before. The sideline bypassed Thaddeus Young's screen, Angzi caught the ball and threw a 3-pointer 45 degrees on the left. With a scream, the basketball brought a burst of white waves. Angzi's 3-pointer. The goal was scored. The point difference was reduced to 14 points. In the second half, the 76ers organized a counter-attack under Angzi's leadership. Now they have narrowed the 6-point difference. As the game continued, Stephen Curry rushed to the front court and scored a 3-pointer. It can be seen that he wanted to return to Angzi for a goal, but the forced 3-pointer failed to hit. Evan Turner grabbed the rebound. Field Angzi organized another wave of 3-point tactics. Angzi continued to score. 3 points are accounted for, and the points difference is further reduced by 11 points. Angzi's another 3-pointer. It's beautiful. With 2 3-pointers in a row, the 76ers are getting better and better. With the Warriors' offense, Stephen Curry dribbled the ball slowly, and Angzi was close to him. After luck for a while, seeing that most of the 24 seconds passed, Stephen Curry suddenly took a step forward, and an 11 also took a step back. However, an 11's defensive focus remained the same. He felt that Stephen Curry's move seemed to be a fake move. Sure enough, Stephen Curry saw Angzi take a step back, he directly withdrew the step he took, and then pulled directly outside the 3-point line. Angzi didn't lose his center of gravity, he also jumped up and slapped Stephen Curry's 3-pointer directly. There was a bang. Cheers rang out again, but this time was mixed with some exclamations. Front big hat? Angzi gave Stephen Curry a hot pot. The basketball bounced and flew out of the backcourt. So the Warriors needed to reserve from the backcourt to organize the offense. Looking at the game time again, there were only 6 seconds left in 24 seconds. So Stephen Curry served in the backcourt. I hurried to the front court and scored a 3-pointer, but still didn't make it. With an 11-point difference, the 76ers ushered in an opportunity to reduce the difference to a single digit, so Angzi clapped his hands, chong chong chong. After receiving the ball from the backcourt, Tony Roten rushed directly towards the front court. Then, the 3-point tactic of the front court was launched again, but this time, the Warriors were guarded. After Angzi bypassed Thaddeus Young's screen, Harrison Barnes made it up directly, and Angzi still received the ball and made it up. Harrison Barnes missed Evan Turner, Angzi passed the ball, and Evan Turner caught the ball in the middle of a jumper. Go in. Go in. Go in, Angzi muttered in her heart as she looked at the leaping Evan Turner. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 358. Huh. The goal is scored. Angzi jumped up. Goal scored. The 76ers reduced the point difference to single digits. For the main players in Angzi, even if their task is completed when the point difference is reduced to single digits, more time in the preseason will be reserved for the players with training camp contracts. Women.law. Therefore, after Angzi played with the main force for a while, he was replaced by Brett Brown, and the point difference on the field was only the last 6 points. The 76ers replaced the main force, and the Warriors also replaced the main force in due course. The two teams are fighting off the bench, and the 76ers are inevitably behind. The 76ers bench was chaotic, everyone wanted to behave, but everyone was caught up in a solo fight, so in the face of the Warriors' more sophisticated offensive and defensive coordination, the point difference just narrowed by Angzi was opened. However, the difference at this time was opened, and it was not so important anymore. Angzi smiled and talked with his teammates on the side, then sometimes squinted, watching the game on the court, thinking in his heart, maybe this game is over, the the 15-member rosters should be basically released, right? Anzi knows that this is basically the way the team's roster this season is. The signing of Sean Livingston, Francisco Garcia, and the traded Jack Lauder should be the limit that the 76ers can do at the moment. The next step is to select the remaining players from that group of training camp contracts to fill the 15-man roster. Cole Aldridge signed afterwards was not a fully guaranteed contract, so there is also the possibility of leaving. However, looking at the performance of this game, Anzi feels that Cole Aldridge should not leave. He is currently here. The only center in the 76ers with the ability to protect the basket. The game was over quickly, and the 76ers lost the game without a surprise. They lost 15 points, which is not an ugly score. For the 76ers, losing is not terrible. After all, they are now more like a patchwork team. Against a playoff team like the Warriors, it would be strange if they can win. However, in the eyes of those media reporters who have never been optimistic about the 76ers, the 76ers lost 15 points to the Warriors. Although it was a preseason game, it is enough to prove that the 76ers will be very bad in the new season. They will say, look, in a preseason game, the Warriors didn't play with all their strength, and the 76ers lost 15 points. In the real regular season, how can they play? But Stephen Curry doesn't think so. The wave that just came up in the third quarter showed Stephen Curry what the strongest 76ers led by Anzi is like, at least the impact in a short period of time. The Warriors are what can't be resisted is definitely not the big bad team in the media. After the game, Anzi was interviewed by several domestic media on the sidelines, and Stephen Curry was also stopped by a reporter from the United States. The two were on each side, answering a few questions, and then happened to end the interview together. Anzi chatted with Dao and Lu Wei on the sidelines, then walked towards the player channel, and met Stephen Koo on the way in. Seeing Stephen Curry, an 11 thought of the sentence, "Why did you choose the 76ers, a bad team?" So Anzi stopped Stephen Curry, "Hey, Stephen, do you still think we are a bad team?" Stephen Curry had already walked a long distance. He looked at Anzi behind him and shook his head. Although he did not speak, Anzi knew that Stephen Curry had recognized the strength of the 76ers. The loss in the first game of the China game did not affect the mood of the 76ers. The 76ers and the Warriors had a rest in the Magic City. They played around in the Magic City for a day, and then boarded to the capital the next night. Plane. In the capital, both the 76ers and the Warriors received a warm welcome from the fans. Among them, the 76ers received the most welcome. In the airport, Anzi's signing hands were almost gone. After the start of the game, Anzi's state was also affected to a certain extent. Although he played only 10 minutes in total in the last game, but with a high shooting rate, he scored 22 points and 4 assists. The whole game only missed 3 shots, and this game is obviously difficult for Anzi to have such a high shooting percentage. The first 2 shots were missed consecutively, and then gradually adjusted. Perhaps Brett Brown felt that he had seen enough of the performance of the training camp players. In this game, he gave the main players more opportunities, so the first half of the game was still relatively stalemate. However, in the second half of the game, the 76ers still fell behind and lost 10 points in the end. Tony Rutan, who was the starter in the last game, scored 14 points and 3 assists. This game continued to start. Because Anzi was in general, he got more opportunities and showed a higher offense. He continued to kill with the ball. Entering the post, after the game, Tony Rutan also scored a high score of 20 points. Evan Turner had 8 points, 3 rebounds and 4 assists in the last game. This game continued to show his all-around attributes, 14 points, 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Inside, Thaddeus Young scored 15 points and 6 rebounds in 2 consecutive games. Spencer Hawes did not perform well, 6 points and 3 rebounds in the first game. Although he played 27 minutes in the second game, he only scored 4 points and 5 points. Board, shooting is only 2 of 7 shots. The two veterans signed with full guarantees played well. Sean Livingston had 7 points and 5 assists in the first game, 11 points and 3 assists in the second game, and Francisco Garcia scored 9 points on 3 of 5 three-pointers in the first game. In the second game, he scored 13 points on 3 of 4 three-point shots and 2 2-points. The traded Jack Lauder's data is not obvious. He only scored 2 and 5 points in the 2 games, but his role on the defensive end has been shown is considered the most outside defense in the 76ers except Angzi good player. The original Genjian center Haas did not perform well, but he gave Cole Aldridge more opportunities. In the first game, he had 4 points, 6 rebounds and 2 blocks. In the second game, he also had 4 points, 7 rebounds and 3 blocks. His non-guaranteed contract turned into a guarantee, and there should be no problem. The number 11 rookie Mkaway, who could not get the main position, performed very poorly in the 2 games. In the first game, he scored 4 points and 2 assists on 1 of 3 shots. In the second game, he did not score 0 of 2 shots. Obviously failing to start this incident had a big impact on Mkaway. However, Angzi, who was going to talk to Mkaway, finally changed his mind. He decided to wait and see the changes. Mkaway's strength must be okay, but now, Angzi feels that his comfort will not have much effect. Mkaway needs more time to find himself. After the 2 games in China, the 76ers spent another 2 days in the capital. They visited the Forbidden City and boarded the Great Wall. Angzi also booked 4 tables in Quanjude. He invited his teammates, coaches and the following league staff to eat a meal of roast duck. Finally, the 76ers boarded the plane back to the United States.